What if Astro Cartography could help you better design your legacy? I'd like to welcome Indra Rinzler to the Design Your Legacy podcast. Welcome, Indra.
Thank you very much, Angelina. It's nice to see you again.
It is my pleasure to see you also and to reconnect. So, you have decades of experience when it comes to reading individuals' Vedic astrology charts, etc. You've traveled to India. Would you share a little bit more about your background, whether that's growing up in New York City or your time as a trader of artifacts and so forth?
Wow. Where to start? I'm just a country boy at heart. Who's lived long enough that if you live long enough, then you've done a bunch of things. And I grew up in Manhattan and left there after high school, almost never to return. Returned, but not really. And I ended up coming to California in 1970 as metaphysics was starting and the 60s were ending, but I had had the 60s where I was. And I started on the spiritual path 1970, buying books at a metaphysical bookstore in Berkeley. And still on the path 50 plus years later, and lived for 20 years in a spiritual community dedicated to a guru. I traveled the world for 20 years. Part of that is trader, importing items. What a fun thing. I would go to countries. I would go to third world countries that handmade goods, and I would buy them in the marketplace to bring them back to US and sell wholesale to stores. Traveled in my VW van for 12 years. And then it was time to start what I always wanted to do, which was to be an astrologer, to share and be helpful to people from astrology. And something that is relatively new, you may not have heard this before, so I'm excited to have give you something new, is that maybe you have, but anyways, the idea that came in last 6 months is that the readings are about alignment, helping people to align with their higher selves, and how we do that is by clarifying the things that are not in alignment. That the process is by giving people the awareness is that you're doing this, or with no right or wrong, no good or bad, no judgments, but just the mere act of that you're psychologically, that you're obsessive or compulsive, or that the behaviors you're doing are not really from your highest and they're protective or defensive or whatever the situation is. Your Mars is this, your Mercury is that, your Jupiter is this in astrological talk. That the idea there is somebody said recently, I'm not exactly sure even the context, they said tough love. And they thought that my reading was tough love because it confronted them with their bullshit. And so they called it tough love. And I don't think of it as tough love. I think of it as telling your truth. Radical honesty is without, hopefully without shame or fear or anger, is just to look at what you're doing. As soon as you see it, you're really happy to drop it, especially as you get older and older. And so the reading becomes one of alignment with the higher self, and it's not something I do, that it's through me, not from me. And I say that when it was from me, it wasn't as good a reading. It was much better when it was through me. So I probably went off track, but at least I answered I gave an answer to your question. So there we are.
Yes. I want to circle back to something that your website talks about. You wrote on your website, we live in challenging times. How do we find answers? What do we really know in this life? And you also wrote, while our lives can be extremely challenging, within that lies tremendous opportunity. Say more.
Well, the reality of it is that we don't grow except through the challenges, generally. I mean, it isn't to say that we can't grow, but mostly it's the impetus from difficult situations where we um, are forced to rethink positions and to admit deficiencies and fallacies, and we get hurt and our heart breaks. These are the situations where we grow. And the situations that aren't like that are mundane life, and they're okay too, but they don't have necessarily growth in them. We used to said with kids they had growth spurts. So there was a spurt where they weren't growing, but they would be growth spurts. And so we have growth spurts. That's part of the process, is that while we can grow without being totally triggered, the reality of it is that it is slower and it's not as deep. It's not the aha moments generally. I'm not trying to diss on them, but the fact is that it's the going through the pain is the aha moments generally, right?
Well, absolutely. But then there's growing pains, which are always
That's the impetus that I can't take it anymore.
yeah,
I
yeah,
gotta. It's so bad that I have to admit it might be me
yeah.
and look
One,
at it.
yeah, one of the things that you mentioned in our preamble this morning was that astrocartography, which is, and I know you're going to define it in a moment, but a lot of times it's the last step you said, and people can be looking on the outside compared to working on their own inner joy and feeling their own inner truth. Go ahead.
Um, so explain that. The astrocartography is location astrology. It's the power of place, and that it's become popular and maybe rightly so, not for what people think it can do, but what it does do. But the thing is that we can bring in place, and that there's powers we feel, energies we feel in different places based on our chart, based on the we can lay there's the software can create a ley lines of your own chart onto the earth that create a place where a certain the lines are the 0 degrees of the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th house. I know it's a little cumbersome, but it's the 0 degrees of the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th house. The first, fourth, seventh, and 10th house are the angular houses or the cardinal energy houses. There's considered those points in astrocartography. I never heard this except in astrocartography, that those points are considered to be the most powerful points in the chart. And so the lines when the and so each planet has a place in the Earth where it goes through the first house, the fourth house, the seventh house, and the 10th house. And they are designed as places to help your self your self-growth in the first house, your relationships in your seventh house, your career in your 10th house, and your grounding in yourself in your fourth house. And so I think I need no,
Bless
I don't
you.
have to
Bless you.
sneeze. I thought I did. So the idea here is that when you get excited about anything, the idea is that, oh, it's going to tell me where I'm going to meet my soulmate, and everybody treats it as Shangri-La, and all I need to do is go to the right place and everything's fine. But that's part of the myth of astrocartography. And so the idea here is that while a place can be more energetic, most of the time, those energies it can be difficult because they're intense. So you go to a Mars line and you think, oh, well, I can do more, but it's like the line doesn't have any on-off switch. It's always making you do more. And it's not a place of relaxation, it's a place of doing. So the reality of it is the way I present it to my clients is that we bring our baggage, we bring our natal chart wherever we go, we bring our stories, we bring our natal chart, we bring our difficulties with us. And so I find that while I can pick up your story and your life in a reading, people are wanting to find solutions to their life through where should I be? And I say, well, okay, we'll take a look at that. But first, let's take a look at what you're bringing with you and what's happening already where you are. So we end up in the reading. We start taking a look at their chart, depending on which reading they have, I should say. We look at their chart, and I'm a Vedic astrologer in order to see the strengths and weaknesses of the planets, and then I ask them to give me a little history on where they've been and how it's been there. And this is incredibly revealing because I find patterning there and the patterning may say that it doesn't seem to matter where you are, you're on lines or not on lines, you're the same. It's how you feel that so people say, well, I had a good career and I was socially popular. Okay. So then you say, so I go, okay, great. So you say that for a few places, and some places you say don't. And the thing is, I look at the lines, and the places you have lines may be that wasn't the successful place, and the place you don't have lines may have been the successful place, or it may be that it sometimes you have lines there, and sometimes you don't, and the lines you have quite often people pick the same line. They may go to a Pluto line, three different places. They may go to a Saturn line, three different places. These lines, like the where two planets conjunct, they're in your chart. So when they're in the first house, they're going to be together on those lines, and the fourth and the seventh and the 10th house. And people quite often will go to those different places around the world, two or three of them. And I had a client recently who had a Pluto line in New Zealand, and they were supposed to be in Portugal, and the same line, Pluto line, went do 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 do, and then right through Portugal. Same line. The only line there. Same line. And so these things are kind of interesting. And the reality of it is that you have to work on your baggage. People say, well, I want inner peace. And inner peace is a while you can go to a peaceful place, you can be totally bored out of your mind by a peaceful place if you don't have peace within you. I take it back to it's really it's they want it to be the first work is let's find the place, but it's the reality of it. Let's find the peace, let's find the harmony within us, and then it doesn't seem to matter then it may not matter where you go. You take it with you wherever you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to read something also from your website again for those that might not know in the context and background of Vedic astrology. You had said it's understanding the energy from the stars. The stars incline, but do not compel.
The stars incline, do not compel. This is nobody knows who said it, but it could be it's from Greece or even older. This is the one of the oldest stories in the world is free will. That the stars incline and we can say, well, look, I'm stuck in my way. Look, Saturn does this, Jupiter does that, Mars is this in my life. It's natal and I'm kind of stuck in it. But the reality of it is that it's you can overcome those. You can decide to change. And that's what happens in those growth periods we already talked about.
The growing pains.
The growing pains, yeah.
Your website also, and I'm just sharing this just for context for those that are new to the subject. You wrote astrology is the study of the interaction of human beings and his or her external environments, mainly from the planets and cosmic forces. electromagnetic energy of attraction and repulsion affect us, and we can choose to counter what the forces do to our bodies and minds through conscious living and the attention to focused practices. Once we know how to control our inner nature, we can overcome the outer or astrological influences. And again, you had said it dates back thousands of years.
That's what you did. That's what I just said. Yeah. That
Yeah.
sounds pretty good. I didn't know I wrote that.
Yeah. Well, I know, and I'll share this openly with the listeners. You had done a reading for me, and I'm in a phase of Jupiter right now, which is just expand, expand, expand. And it's like I can't take my foot off of the gas pedal. So if I chose to, let's say, move somewhere a little bit more remote, like this somewhere in Arizona or New Mexico, then it would be a little bit calmer. But for as long as I stay in California, it's like that foot is just metaphorically on that gas pedal, and I can't slow down because of that
That
energy outside of me.
that's the Jupiter line you're living on in California. Yeah.
Right, correct.
That is the problem. You see, it's like people will say, and it's not about people, but it's just the nature of teachings is that what is it that a little bit is a dangerous a little bit knowing a little bit is dangerous. So people say, well, Jupiter's good and Saturn is bad, so move to that Jupiter line. But the thing is, the Jupiter line doesn't have an on-off switch. And if your Jupiter isn't good, meaning that it is, if your Jupiter is expansive, then then you can handle that energy, and you can say within yourself, look, Jupiter, I'm going to take a break, time out. I'm going to weekend. I got to take a time out. I can't party every night. And you can survive in that. But if your Jupiter isn't good and you're already feeling shame around, I'm not saying this is your story because I don't specifically remember, but the idea is that you feel shame that you're not expanding enough, and what will people think? And you feel like everybody's judging you because you're not expansive enough, when everybody's thinking, oh my God, when is she going to slow down? The thing is that it's difficult energy, and in many cases, and so I'll put you on the spot here, is that by understanding the knowledge, there should be able to be some, at least, if not improvement, there should be some, at least some understanding. There should be some actions taken to counter it effects. Right?
Well, I think what you're referring to is the power of choice. Once somebody has some good information, then they can choose. Compare it to staying in a Groundhog Day of like, wow, this is just wearing me out or wearing me down. Like,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, much better way to put it. Yeah. So, I mean, is that your experience?
well, I think that when somebody has an opportunity to have their chart read, and again, to any individuals out there that could think that this is a liberal or a radical area, one of the things you did share in your website notes is even back so many years ago, it could have been you said even into the Renaissance, men or women could be killed or jailed for speaking of the Earth orbiting the sun. I think it's becoming more incorporated into our culture today to explore this and not feel as if one could be stepping on hot water. But yeah, I just think that it gives somebody context that if we're not able to read the baseline, then call in an expert and ask them what are their thoughts. Because if
Yeah.
not, we could be unnecessarily traumatizing ourselves, or we could pick choices that could help excel or improve the design of our legacy compared to staying in a place where our legacy gets sabotaged.
Is it, I may butcher this, but is it the Dylan line? You don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So
Well,
60 years, 60
I
years ago.
yeah,
But it's helpful to have a weatherman if you can't feel it yourself. I think he was talking about things that were obvious back then, the changes that uh have happened. And that was, the beginning. I lived through all of that. So it was quite a time, but it's interesting because it's you have the societal changes, the generational changes, and then you have your own, you know, adventure with it, and your own understanding of it. And so the everybody everybody kind of went in different directions. Some people went to the jungle and never left, and some people went to India and never left, and some people, just everybody in the 70s, the late 60s and 70s was awakened to something, but it was so interesting because it awakened into something completely different.
Yes, yes. And I know you also shared you're in a place in your life where the Saturn influence is big, and Saturn
Yeah.
is like reflect, reflect, reflect.
Yeah. So I have to tell you something new about that is, of course, I'm coming into the Mercury period. I'm leaving Saturn in April of next year. So I'm 9 months, less than 9 months now. And so so as I move into Mercury and I'm leaving Saturn, I'm starting to lose the focus and discipline that I had in Saturn. And it's really kicking my butt because I never had focus and discipline, and then I had it. I remember people would pass my room in India and they said, "Well, you're always working and doing," and I say, "Yes, it was. Isn't it wonderful?" And that's not the way I feel now, and I'm having Saturn withdrawal going on, and uh, I know it's going to work out, but it's really interesting.
Yes. Tell me before I ask you a little bit more about like the subject of legacy, why do you think Vedic astrology works and is relevant?
Well, the interesting thing about astrology is that it's any astrology seems to be relevant, but it just really depends on, well, what it is that you're looking for. Because people have like Western astrologers will find similar stuff in your chart as from what I say, but they'll talk about it completely differently. It'll be the aspect of this, and it'll be the Pluto that, and I don't really believe in any of that, but I do believe in what I do with Vedic astrology and the particular way that I do the astrology. And but the fact is that it doesn't really seem to matter. Each of them are a vibration, and I'm not going to say when each. I'm not talking about just Vedic and Western, because there are within Vedic or Western, there are an incredible number of ways to cast the chart with the different house systems, with the different ayanamshas, the adjustments in Vedic astrology. Somebody told me they were some kind of an astrologer, and planets move two houses based on the way that they cast a chart. So there's so many, but somehow they all seem to tell the truth. They have a different vibration and or frequency. And so for me, the thing about it is that I'm interested in spirituality. I'm interested in finding the places where there are attachments, where there are the obsessions and compulsions. I'm interested in the core energies that are involved in a very spiritual way, very high vibration, high energy kind of way of looking at it. And that the chart that I use, meaning the way that I cast it, has that frequency, and that's how I use it. But you could cast that same chart or a chart very similar to it and use it in completely different ways.
Yes, yes. Well, I think it's powerful to have feedback because a lot of times people don't know their blind spots. And if somebody could just tell them, it could break pattern. And again, out of that monotony of somebody doing something a certain way. And then, like you had said, they need to grow. Humans in this experience of life, in this life, need to grow.
Well, I that I always believe that by giving people that it isn't tough love by putting their stuff in their face, but that by objectively and with compassion, with no judgments, having some indicators, some scientific indicators. I call them based on science. That science and intuition is my approach. That there's science in these. There's sacred geometry. There's mathematics all over astrology, and that by I spent a long time waiting to figure out a way to express to understand the energy of the chart in a way. I knew what I wanted to do, but it took me 40 years to figure out how to do it.
Yes. I want to
Not
circle
that
back. Go ahead, go ahead.
not that I ever could put a word on what it is that I wanted to do, but I could feel it, without words.
Well, searching.
Searching,
Yeah.
yeah, searching.
I want to read
Waiting.
something else on your website that relates to
Okay.
Astro Cartography because, again, I think that in terms of tools, there's the financial tools, and I have lots of podcast episodes about the legal and the financial, but there's also the spiritual, and that's why I'm diving deep today into this. So, another portion of your website reads, in typical astrology, the birth information is cast into an astrology chart. With Astro Cartography, we cast the birth information onto a world map. The map looks like one of those old flat Earth maps of the world from the 1500s, with the Pacific Ocean on both the left and the right sides of the map, and all the land masses spread out accordingly in between. Onto the map is printed many different colored lines which represent the arc of all the planet paths at our birth. Each planet has 4 lines of path representing the most auspicious and powerful times of the Earth's day: sunrise and sunset, noon, and midnight. And again, you had mentioned that every planet carries a certain energy, and depending on what we would like to influence us at that particular stage of our life, it's like, do you go to certain planets or certain energies, or do you back off? So that, for instance, if you need that time of rest, you go towards a planet or a line where it makes sense. And so you have the energies working for you compared to against you, as relatively speaking.
Yes. But I'm finding, interestingly enough, I'm not doing much. It's not that people either have an idea of a place and then they accept that the nature of that particular place. I don't really have a lot. In 2024, people are so overwhelmed with energy and so overwhelmed in their life and living at a where stress is normal. Living at a pace where stress is normal. I have this line. People say, "Well, I want to move to a place where there's nobody living there, but it's really cool, and I can take classes, and the air is clean, and the water is clean." And I say to them, "What you're really looking for, and it's cheap." I said, "What you're really looking for is 1975. That doesn't exist right now. This is a chaotic world, and I don't know if it's just my people. It could be. It could, so there might be some truth in that, but mostly people are not looking for, I want to get my life kickstarted, so I'm going to move to my Mars line. Most people are really trying to heal the inner child inside, heal the inside. And what happens is that they personify it on the outside. They project it onto the outside. And so I end up, the reading ends up being a lot of trying to make that clear, because once that becomes clear, then whatever, how you said it before, that people make a conscious choice. The choices seem more obvious, and it's not the me or the reading telling you what you need to do. It's you seeing, oh yeah, I see how I'm fighting against myself.
Yeah, yeah. How else do you think astro cartography and or receiving a Vedic reading, Vedic astrology reading, could help an individual, a client, better design their legacy?
Well, I like how you weave these all together now. Uh, so well, with the astrocartography, we're dealing with place. And I'm so happy the way these tools developed, because it was nothing conscious from me. It was my being open. It wasn't my figuring anything out. It was just my getting open enough to say, "Oh yeah, I want to do that." So the Astro Cartography is about place, and so about your relationship with space and where you're living, and your whole fantasy world is to place. And if people were this, and if it were just like that, and if it wasn't, I had a client with a line recently about how brown it is in Tucson in the summer. I mean, Tucson is dry in the summer. I haven't lived there, but it's barely wet in the winter. But the thing is, that's just the nature of the place, and the people that live there and stay there, they get into, it's the brown season, and it just is what it is, and then when it isn't, then it just has more meaning to you. But it's a way of living with your life rather than being subjected to outside circumstances. So I do this thing. I may have told you this one. The question is, if your neighbor makes noise and it disturbs you, whose fault is it?
Yeah,
So
I remember. I remember.
yeah, so whose fault is it? So will you answer the
Well,
question?
I think what you're pointing to is if we allow something to get underneath our skin and bother us, yeah, is it the external or is it our reaction?
So there
Mhm.
are an incredible amount of externals in well I mean in astrology, but I mean we do externals all the time. It's your fault, bad partner, bad coworker, bad boss, bad car
Neighbor,
repairman, you know. Say it again.
bad neighbor.
Bad neighbor, yeah. So it's a way of looking at life, and I'm trying to get rid of that. But in the astrocartography, it really comes up because it's about place, and then you can bemoan the
The location, the environment.
yeah, the location. I had a client recently without saying what the place was. One of the cool places that the people were very, liberal and growthful and spiritual, but at the same time they were unauthentic and not very vulnerable and not very real. And she was very elegant in the conundrum, This is the conundrum. And so how do you find peace with that? Is inside. I don't know any other way to find it because getting the world to line up with how you want it to be, that doesn't work. I mean, even if you could get the world to line up with how you want it to be, you're not going to be satisfied by it. But so you asked the question, other readings. So I have other ways of doing the same thing, and not about place, but I use the Enneagram as a way to learn your core triggers. What's your core personality? And it's really important to understand your personality and how you react to things and why you react and the core triggers. And so I go through that with the Enneagram of Personality. I use the Wheel of Totality as a way to give you the blind spots, the places of ignorance, the empty houses that no one talks about in astrology. The empty houses, people say, "Oh no, we talk about it. It's the ruler." The ruler is the planet halfway around the solar system that really has nothing to do. I mean, it's the ruler of the house, but the house is empty. It's great. You want to know who pays tax? The house is empty. We can find out who owns the house and who's paying taxes, but nothing's happening in the house. And so the Wheel of Totality talks about the aware. Every house has awareness in it. Every house has consciousness, has lessons to learn. But if you don't have a planet there, then those lessons are blank, and we don't start working on them until we're 50. And so that is really powerful reading. It's very deep, and
I would
it's
like to,
see. Go ahead.
sorry for interrupting. I wanted to add that I think one of the ways that having somebody's Enneagram or astrocartography chart being read helps them better design their legacy. Because I think, like you had said, somebody then knows what exactly it is that they're working with. And sometimes we can have illusions. And if somebody just gives us what you would call the hard truth, then we go, okay, all right, well, let me just sit with it for a little while. Like, for example, I think in the Enneagram, I came up as like number 4, the
Yeah.
individualist. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be that. But then it's like, well, what if I am? And if I am, then let me sit down and come to peace with that, that's what I'm working with. If that's the foundation, the platform of where I start from, then at least I'm not going to, have a misperception or a misconception regarding, what again, it's like we've got Play-Doh or clay, and that's,
Uh,
yeah, regarding what we have to work with. And sometimes again, what we have to work with, we can hear somebody, who's like 7 years old and they go to the piano and they take something ordinary and they make something extraordinary with it. And to someone else, it could just be a darn piano from a garage sale. And yet somebody can make, beautiful music and magic from something that's just so ordinary. So even if I don't want to be an individualist, yet that could be the thing that, and you're smiling, Indra.
well, if anybody can make that piano sing, it's a 4. I think of it as a level um, a checkup. Occasionally I have clients. Why do they come? Because they're curious. Most people come because there's the difficulties have built up, the frustrations have built up to a place that I want to get some outside influence. But then there's the stage before that is they're just merely curious. And while they don't hear as well, generally, they still have availability for the information. So the wheel is another tool a tool that I was given that is an incredible tool to know what is it that you're missing? What are the deficiencies? It's for the 20s, it's not quite as relevant because you're not really quite there yet, but still it can be helpful for anyone. And 18s sometimes have a wisdom beyond their years. Somehow they get a little that they're not as sharp at 20 because because they have a little bit more experience and they get off center with the experience. But the 18 is a little bit more wide-eyed, and I want to take everything in. But now 20, oh well, now I had a bad experience with that, so I can't trust that. They're a little less. They get smarter again, but that's not a. Those are those are more difficult years.
Yeah, yeah. I know that you had shared with me before, you had said the sum total of our waking up is our legacy. Do you still define legacy by that guiding
Well,
principle?
that sounds like a really good, brand kind of a marketing saying. So I wouldn't want to fool with that.
Yeah, that might be the podcast episode title.
There you go. I wouldn't want to fool with it now that it came from an empty moment. If I try to overthink it, I'll probably ruin it.
What would you like your holistic legacy to be?
Oh boy, holistic legacy.
Because we're more than our will and our estate planning documents and how we get to be remembered and what we get to live into.
I had a teacher. I can't remember exactly, but his email was something like "No one, nobody," and I'm afraid I'm more into that legacy than I am into the legacy of uh, structures or institutions or anything beyond just beyond the last breath.
I would think, I agree with you, and I would think a part of your legacy would be bringing this knowledge forward about, the hard truths that you deliver to clients. I think that'll be a part of your holistic legacy.
Well, thank you for that. That brings me, of course, to the book and the books, because as I move into Mercury, that has been the focus. So Since we talked, I got my book back from an editor, and I'm still sort of dealing with that 2 months later. My book went from 90,000 words to 31,000 words, and I'm still sort of taking in it's that how to move forward. In essence, she said, well, you can put back in whatever you want. But when it went from 90,000 words to 31,000 words, it became very different. And I'm still sort of in the process. The question is what it says what I want it to say?
Mm,
And
mm.
I think the answer must be no, because
You're still ruminating on it.
yeah, because I'm still ruminating on it. Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say are your top 3 or 4 values?
Values? Oh boy, I probably wouldn't say anything, but perhaps loyalty. Probably a dog. What is the loyalty? Uh, values. What a difficult question. I never thought of myself as values. Um, because I can be very disciplined about something, and then I can be completely undisciplined about anything. And everything. And so I would say one thing that my wife really enjoys, I don't, this is my projection, of course, is spontaneity, that when we're discussing a solution to something, I'll probably only come with out of the box solutions, but she'll frequently say, I never thought about it that way. So I would have to say that I don't know if that's a value, but I'm going to make it into a value that so there's one
I
or
think it's
two.
absolutely, it's wonderful. I would also say the values around adventure, because you were willing to travel around the world and live in India and leave Manhattan and so forth.
Yeah. I'm pretty much at home everywhere. I mean, if I'm not at home, it's not because of where I am. It's because of in me. I'm one of those people that I don't like to unpack. Like if I go to a room for a night or two, particularly, I keep everything together and I hardly pull out anything. I may pack it, but I keep try to keep everything together because it's that's my level of organization. There's a line in the Enneagram that I use with one of the types, and it's the idea is sensibly organized. Sensibly organized. You can be a messy desker or you can be a neat desker. It doesn't matter that you have to organize it what's sensible for you, and what's sensible for you may not be sensible for somebody else. I have to keep it out or I forget about it.
Yes. Final question. If you were to design a hardcover coffee table book for the next year, let's say a week or two or a month, what images and or life stories, life lessons would fill its pages?
Ooh, well, that would probably be the book that I'm writing, and it's not really a coffee table book, but you can put it on your coffee table. So I don't think it would be much different than that. That seems to be for now 6 years. That seems to be what I've been working on.
Okay.
So I've already done
Okay.
that.
Can you give us a sneak peek into the table of contents?
The table of contents. Well, there isn't actually a table of contents, and there isn't. Actually, what it is that yeah, I don't really want to get into it.
Okay, no problem. Well, let me wrap up today's conversation with you had spoke about the doorways to conscious living. How do we put wisdom into practice? And you had shared number 1 is learning to observe. Number 2 is letting go and releasing whatever doesn't serve us. Number 3, loving ourselves, which we oftentimes can forget in today's society. And number 4, living in the moment. Would you round us out with any comments on these four doorways to conscious living.
Well, learning to observe, we have to learn to watch our own thinking and behavior. We need to watch our reaction to other people's thinking and behavior. We need to get out of the movie of our life into the audience, get out of the it about us and, oh my God, what's going to happen, and get some objectivity on our own life to and that is the point. The points in the reading are designed to give you some things to observe. They're not, again, it's not a rating system. There's no scorecard. There's no right or wrong. There's no shoulds or coulds. There's no everybody's doing the best that they can. Letting go and releasing what doesn't serve us. Ice cream may serve us now, so we don't have to let go of that. But whatever we're doing that isn't serving us, the idea to let that go. When we do that, then we love ourselves. When we don't do it, then we don't love ourselves because we're holding on to things that prevent us from loving ourselves. When we love ourselves, then we live in the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think theoretically this is wonderful. And I think in terms of application, people hold on to stories, and it might not even be their own stories. It could be their parents' stories, their grandparents' stories. And yet
Absolutely.
for the idea to dawn on them that they can release that doesn't serve them.
That's right. And the idea is that there's no time constraint. It's no right or wrong. You just do it on your own level. But as you're ready to let go of things, you let them go, and then you are more able to love yourself and
Yeah,
be in the moment.
very cool. Before I read my closing paragraph, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on the subject of legacy?
Well, the only thought that comes to mind is just to thank you for your efforts into thinking about people's legacy, because I said one of my lines is that I never thought about retirement until about when I turned 65, and there are people who uh, who think ahead about these things in life that the rest of us don't like to think about or don't want to think about, and so congratulations on your work, and you feel freer to me. You feel free. Let's just say that. So I hope that things have been going well for you.
They have been. Yes, yes. Well, I think the last we spoke was in February. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I know before you had suggested that I moved to Texas, Arizona, or New Mexico, and I was like, there? And you had said, listen, in 2024, there's a yoga studio in every town. It's not what you think.
Have you moved?
I have not yet. I have not yet.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
eh, everything in its own time. It's interesting because the myth in Astro Cartography doesn't always take into account that timing. I mean, they may take account into timing as far as transits, but not in terms of that at certain times in your life, certain kinds of energy, you're young enough that Jupiter may be good for you. When you're my age, that Jupiter may is too much. Then you'd maybe happy to move to a quieter place for you, but not maybe at your particular age and what you've got going on. It's a compromise.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
and it supports you.
yeah. Well, I can share that the 40s aren't the new 30s. Okay. And on that note, what's a good website if any of the listeners would like to learn?
The website is indrarinzler.com, and I want to give your listeners, I give them two free offers. If they want their Vedic chart, then you email me, indrarinzler@gmail.com, all one word, Indra Rinzler. Birth date, time, and place, and I'll send you back your chart and a little crib sheet so that you can read it a little bit better. And then I'll make a comment, but it's not a reading. And the second is if you want to learn about Enneagram, if you want to try to figure out your number, I'll send you this test, 5 or 10 minutes, simple test. that will get you started in that. So either that, either the either it's either of those offers at the Indra Rinzler at gmail.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Before I read my closing paragraph, thank you so much for being a guest today. I thought you brought tremendous value regarding realizing that no matter what is outside of us, and that is good information, that it's also happiness and peace of mind are also an inside job. And sometimes we have to hear hard truths, and as a part of our growing in this lifetime, when we're ready to embrace new levels of truth.
Yeah, the higher side wants to hear it and knows it already. It's the lower side that is the it needs to hear it and is fighting it. So,
Very cool. In closing,
okay.
then.
Blessings to you.
Thank you. In closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, USA, but international in those I consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moot or moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself in new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us this week. And if you're tuning in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SoundCloud, please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends. So thank you so much for joining us once again. And thank you, Indra, for speaking into your legacy.